want to just take questions, Cam, or do you have?
I think at this point, I'm open to questions with regard to whatever brought you here today. Yeah.
Can you maybe just start then with giving us the sort of bare bones narrative of what you know happened last night?
Certainly, I can tell you that there was a shooting incident that occurred in our downtown last night. I can tell you that right now our investigation team is investigating that incident, which includes interviewing as many people as possible to determine exactly what happened, how it happened, why it happened. I can confirm that there were shots fired, that the quick and heroic action of patrons in the establishment were able to detain the suspect at the scene and hold him until police arrived. So the suspect in that incident is in custody and will be the subject of an ongoing investigation at this time. Right now, we do not know or understand what the motive could have been, and so that's part of our investigation, is trying to determine what led that individual to carry out that shooting incident.
Was he wearing a mask?
I am not aware of him wearing a mask, no.
Do you know how many shots were fired?
It's my understanding there were 2 shots fired.
And where were they fired?
At this point, I'm not 100% sure. There's some indication that at least one may have been fired in an upwards direction, but our forensics team will be there documenting the scene, taking photographs and determining trajectories of bullets and how that all occurred.
Was there?
Do witnesses say if the gunman said anything?
I don't know if anything was said at this point. Certainly that will come out as the investigation continues. But at this point, from what I have seen and read, I'm not aware of any statements being made.
Was the gunman from Saskatoon? Can you say that?
That I don't know.
Do you know how many people were in the bar at the time?
I know there were several patrons. An exact number I don't know, but I do know from investigators that there were several people being interviewed.
Could you say more than a dozen, more than 2 dozen?
I can't speculate on that. I'm not sure.
You mentioned the heroic actions. It was patrons that got this man kind of apprehended and not staff.
That's correct.
What time did police arrive?
I don't have the time that they arrived. I know they arrived very shortly after the initial call, but I don't know the timing there. I don't have that information right now.
The initial news release, I believe, suggested it was sometime after midnight. Some witnesses say it was closer to 11 o'clock. Do you know one way or the other?
I don't. I've heard various times, but I don't know the exact time, and I'd hate to speculate on that.
Do you know what the time frame was from the time you got the call? I know there's lots of cars in front of the Hudsons.
Yeah, all I can say is it occurred in the late evening, and response time and how long it took us to arrive, I'm not sure, but it was very quick.
So the shooter is now in custody. Has he been formally charged?
That process, it's my understanding, last I heard, that process is ongoing. But certainly there will be a release detailing the charges once the entirety of the situation is understood and we are able to make that determination.
But at this point, he's only facing weapons-related charges. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Is he cooperating with police?
I don't know.
What kind of gun was it?
It was, by the description of witnesses, it was a rifle. So the exact make and model, I don't know, but it was a long gun, a rifle.
Aside from the rifle, was anything else seized?
I'm not aware of anything else that was seized.
Do you know if investigators have taken a look at this fellow's social media account and have any comments on the thoughts he was expressing there?
I know that would be a normal course of the investigation, to look at social media to try and develop some insight into frame of mind. At this point, I don't know of any specific social media information, but I'm certain that will be part of the investigation as it proceeds.
This may be putting the cart ahead of the horse, but is there any consideration from officers that this fellow may have been trying to provoke a confrontation with police with a bad ending for himself?
We do hear of incidents like that. At this point, I'm not aware of any threats or any statements that were made in advance of the incident that would lead us to believe that was the case.
Is he known to police?
It doesn't appear he has an extensive history with police, but the details of any interactions with police in the past, I'm not aware of specifics at all.
And are you aware of any outstanding orders he might have had from the court to stay away from people or places?
I'm not aware of any.
Can you confirm the identity?
At this point, no, I will not confirm the identity.
Was it gang related? Can you say? Are you looking into that?
Again, certainly that would be something that we would want to cover off and determine whether or not there was any gang involvement at this point. I don't know of any confirmed gang involvement, but that will be part of the questioning process and part of the determination that goes on.
What's being looked at in terms of somebody walking into an establishment like that with a gun, with a big gun, like as far as the investigation goes?
Well, we're gonna look at any video surveillance that may be available, either from the establishment itself or from the surrounding area. We're going to take the witness accounts and try and probe into the visual observations of people and what they saw, and use the totality of the information we received to try and piece things together as best we can. But certainly in a case like this, that can be an ongoing process that can take days or weeks.
Can you say, did the man with the gun like walk in and then shoot, or was he in the bar? Can you say like the time or like the amount of time he was in there?
I know that the incident occurred very quickly. I know that there was a very quick reaction from the patrons that were involved. And I believe the incident began near the entrance of the establishment, but I can't say how far inside or how far he may have been, how long he may have been in there before something started to unfold.
Can you say roughly how many people gave witness statements to police?
The only thing I can tell you right now is there were several, but I don't have a number.
Have you been able to piece together his movements prior to coming into the bar?
At this point, I know that there was information about his arrival at the establishment, but in terms of anything that happened before he arrived in front of the establishment, I'm not aware of anything.
Could you elaborate a little bit on that? I'm not sure what you meant.
So we have information that originates from the time he arrived, basically. So anything he did in the day prior to his arrival at the establishment, we either don't have that information or I'm not aware of it at this point. But we know exactly when he arrived, and we know, or we're developing an understanding of what transpired from the time he arrived. But in terms of, you know, what he was doing earlier in the day that could have led up to this incident, we don't, I don't have that information.
Was he stopped at the door by bouncers, since you know what happened kind of transpired in those first few minutes or seconds or whatever? Was he stopped by bouncers? Did they check his ID? Did he just walk in randomly?
All I know at this point is that immediately once the situation began, patrons who were in the establishment jumped into action. And so it was very quick, and that's really all I know.
Well, a lot of times police don't like when civilians jump in. In this case, was it a good thing?
Well, absolutely, it's an extremely dangerous situation. We don't recommend that people place themselves in imminent danger in a situation like that. However, only speculation knows what could have happened if they didn't. And so certainly from the perspective of the Saskatoon Police Service, their actions were commendable, and their actions may have prevented something seriously worse.
We seem to be getting into these areas of really awkward questions all the time now, and the latest chapter is what would be police's advice to somebody in Saskatoon in a bar if somebody walks in with a rifle?
Certainly, this is a rarity, and we don't like to talk about it. We wish we didn't have to talk about it. These are very infrequent incidents, thank goodness. But yeah, they do happen, and so we're forced to look at each one individually and try and understand what the individual is thinking in the moment, and that's all we can do.
But as a member of the public, is there any sort of practical advice you could offer if ever confronted with this?
I would say there is no safe or easy answer to that question. It's a case by case, incident by incident basis. It's what an individual feels comfortable with in the moment, and I think from my experience, many people don't have the opportunity to think it through. They're confronted with something, they act in the moment, and in some cases it's not until after the fact that they realize what they did. And sometimes that's when they're overcome with with fear or anxiety over what they just did. And so it's never our expectation as a police service that a member of the public would place themselves in imminent harm where they could face serious injury or death. But again, it's whatever that fight or flight reaction is in the moment that somebody will do.
So there are no best practices, so to speak?
In a case like this, there are no best practices. Yeah, it's a really hard question to answer.
Do you know how many people jumped in, or to help, or civilians?
I don't know for sure, other than there were more than one. I've heard some indication there may have been 3, but I don't have a confirmed number.
Do you know how many officers responded to this?
I don't have an exact number, but I do know there were several. I heard reports of several police cars at the scene, so it would have provoked a significant response, that's for sure.
Are you also able to comment on the Cree Place situation happening today? No? Okay.
Any other questions, guys?
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.